Some of you know me as a former college professor, musician, pilot, farm boy. I love the farm. But there's something you may not be as familiar with. Over the past 20 years, I've ridden motorcycles all across the continent, from one end to the other. This Suzuki V-Strom is called Crazy because of all the crazy trips that we've been on. And obviously, crazy that ain't crazy has no reflection at all on the rider himself. For example, in 2022, we left the Midwest, went to Key West, and then to Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, opposite ends of the continent, back to the Midwest, 14,000 miles in 29 days. But as of today, Crazy is no more. This past June, I was riding Crazy on a very remote section of the Alaska Highway. About an hour or so outside of Fairbanks, my travel partner, Brian Barris, sitting up front here, turned left into a roadside area to take in the scenery. I was trailing. I needed to stop quickly. I had the cruise control on and the front brake. I squeezed to try to release it, much like you tap the brake on a car to release the cruise control. Unfortunately, it malfunctioned. And by the time it did release, there was too much front brake, and I went flying over the handlebars at 65 miles an hour. I was thrown violently off the bike, busted through the windshield. It's true, your life flashes before you in those few quick seconds. Family, friends, thoughts, and the realization, this is gonna hurt. I sure wish I had bought that Klein airbag vest. Looks like Steve Good here, my friend. But there was a more ominous thought at the same time. Is this the end? I hit the pavement, rolled, twisted, and tumbled in every contortionist way possible. Finally, the rough asphalt stopped me. There on my back in the middle of the Alaska Highway, the pain was excruciating. I was crying out in agony. I believe in wearing all the gear all the time. I knew I wasn't going to leave any skin on the road, but I knew my body was going to take a hit. Brian Barris quickly got to me. I was still conscious, writhing in pain. Amid the pain and the disbelief that this accident had actually happened to me, there was an nagging question in my mind. Am I going to make it? See, when the tragedies of life happen, the soberness of the moments cause us to ask some basic questions. What is the point of life? Is it being number one in the office for production purposes? Is it making lots of money? You know, all these are legitimate goals we do to provide for our families. But this morning, I'm asking us to look at the underlying beliefs that become the bedrock of our existence. We are here this morning to celebrate Christmas, the birth of Jesus. For me, the significance of this is a reality that his birth as the Son of God and his death on the cross means that I can have a personal relationship with him because of what he did for me. Not because of me, but because of what he did for me. The fact that God is with us means that he's involved in every single facet of our lives. The truth of this statement became reality when at the age of 7, I had the opportunity to make a choice. I was offered the invitation to accept Jesus into my heart, and I did. That means I chose to follow him and trust him to guide my life. And that has made all the difference. It means inviting the Creator God to walk with me every day through good and bad, and it has been my life's purpose. When the God of the universe comes alongside you and promises to walk with you every step of the way, that means he will be there when I'm laying in the middle of the Alaska highway. He still cares. He showed his presence to me in a very real way. Within 30 seconds after rolling and stopping, keep in mind, we're in a remote section of the Alaska highway. The first car coming from the south, 30 seconds after I stopped rolling, stopped and out walked a paramedic to help me. As if that wasn't enough, the next car, 30 seconds later, coming from the north, was 2 airborne paramedic troopers. Within 1 minute, there were 3 paramedics there to start the recovery process. And to show that God has a sense of humor, one of the cars that stopped was pulling a trailer. Poor Brian was trying to figure out what to do with Crazy because it was all busted up. So this couple raised their hand and said, "No problem. We'll put it on our trailer and we'll take it to Fairbanks for you." I think sometimes we think of angels as these fluffy little things that kind of float around in the clouds. No. Angels are the true people that show up in our lives and minister to us and meet our needs at the appropriate time. Throughout my ordeal, God provided so many angels to help care for me. My immediate family, and several of you, Mike Baird, Floyd Hoffman, Brian Barris. They came to Alaska, spent a week with me, wouldn't let me pay. And if you haven't noticed lately, it's not like Alaska is right around the corner like Indiana and Wisconsin. The NAI Hiffman team stepped up big time in so many different ways. I remember one day the nurse walked in and she handed me this card. I swear that card must have been 2 feet wide and 3 feet tall, and it had almost every signature of people in the company. I had it prominently displayed on the dresser at the foot of my bed, and I used the opportunity to tell all the doctors, nurses, and PTs, and OTs, anybody else that had initials behind their name, what a good company I work for. And inevitably, they all said, "Wow, you are so lucky." I agree. Because you all are angels. Thank you. They loaded me into the ambulance and transported me back to Fairbanks. For several hours, I remained mostly coherent. To show my dedication as a true broker, I actually called Jack Brennan in my office, and I called a client, and I said, "You guys need to talk." And I said, "I've been in a bad accident, and I don't know what's going to happen." But then the severity of the impact of the accident and severity of my injuries became known. I broke 9 ribs on my left side, 6 of which today are still broken. One of the ribs punctured my lung, so my lung was filling up with fluid. My left scapula and this clavicle and scapula, that was all busted up. My left ankle was broken. But all of that got pushed to the side when they realized about 24 hours later that my colon had burst. Septic shock or sepsis had set in, and it was quickly taking me down. And then the lights went out. Fairbanks Hospital did not have the capabilities to address the issues. After one emergency surgery, I was taken by Life Flight jet to Providence Hospital in Anchorage. And for you pilots in the group, I'm glad it was this Lear jet and not a Cessna 172, or I probably wouldn't be here today. Over the course of the next week, I remained in a coma. They performed 6 surgeries trying to eradicate the infection. Because of the repeated surgeries, they left open a 10-inch incision in my abdomen for continued investigation. It was not until many months later, when I was visiting a doctor, that I learned. This doctor said, "Bruce, I don't know how lucky you know you are, but only 20% survived the level of septic shock that you had." When you survive all that, and you know, you kind of come to your senses and know that you have survived against the odds, you continually have blessing and praise on your tongue. Thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you for all the paramedics, doctors, nurses, family, and friends that came to my rescue. These 2 fine young paramedics were transporting me between Providence Hospital, St. Elias Rehabilitation Hospital. My sister was riding with us. She made some comment, I was half out of it, but she made some comment about Bruce is looking forward to eventually being able to have something cold to drink. Because to that point, I'd only had chips of ice. So these guys took me, got me in the room, got me settled. The doctors and nurses were coming in. When a half hour later, who comes walking through the door but these 2 paramedics carrying a Starbucks ice cold coffee? Folks, that's angels. I spent 2.5 months in a hospital in Anchorage, where I had to relearn the basics of how to swallow, eat on my own, and walk. Yes, it took me 2 days to pass my swallow test. The first time they set me up in bed, I fell over because I couldn't support myself. During this period, a family member and some of these special friends down here in front were with me every day. Often they advocated for my needs when I could not. Thank you all deeply. For the first week, they had me in a drug-induced coma as all these surgeries were going on. There are many examples of people that have crazy dreams and visions when they're in this state with all these drugs. I certainly had my share, and I could have you laughing and telling you all the crazy things that I dreamed. During this week of being in the coma, I learned later that the doctors were telling my family that my life was hanging in the balance. As part of the coma, I remember laying in bed, experiencing unbelievable pain, wanting to move, but I could not. Sometimes imagining people were coming in and giving me a shot, and I'd drift off. However, there is one experience that stands out so vividly. It was as real as I am standing before you today. I was lying in the bed, crying, feeling utterly helpless. There was a darkness that seemed to be wanting to pull me further into despair and hopelessness. It felt like good and evil were vying for my life. I was crying out, God, please help me. Please help me. While still in that coma, dark as could be, just pitch black, all of a sudden I heard my pastor's voice. I couldn't make out what he said, but it gave me just a little bit of hope. Then I heard my cousin's voice. It gave me a little bit more hope. And then I felt the presence of Brandon and Jessica Hill from Bern, Indiana, standing at my left side. And then it happened. If you've ever been in an arena or concert setting where the lights are dimmed and people pull out their phones and turn their cell phone lights on, begin waving them in the air, in that moment I saw hundreds of lights starting to come on in the room. And I realized that every single one of those lights represented the prayers of people around the country that were praying for me, and many of you were included in that. Thank you. I was overwhelmed. Tears began to flow as I felt the mercy of God rescuing me. The power of prayer was overcoming the darkness, and it gave me hope and reassurance of God's presence. My heart was warmed, and I knew that God's light had overcome the darkness because God wins over darkness. He always has, he always will. And that's the message of Christmas. See, Jesus came into this world to prove God's power over darkness. John talked about that in his gospel when he said, in him was life, and his life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. This world has seen its share of darkness, and many of us have experienced the pain of living in a broken world. But we do not have to be overcome by the darkness. We are not alone in the darkness. Folks, I'm here to tell you that the answer to the purpose of life lies in the true light of Jesus that we are celebrating. A light that gives hope to each one of us in a dark world. May each of you find your true life purpose in Jesus, and that he'll bring abundant life and light to our world. And again, I want to say thank you to each of you who prayed for me and supported my family. God bless you and Merry Christmas.